Heads of state and government, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I call to order the 7th plenary meeting of the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. The conference will now consider Agenda Item 9, entitled Report of the Interactive Dialogues. The 5 interactive dialogues were held under various themes. I would like to extend my warm congratulations to their co-chairs for their outstanding leadership. I now give the floor to His Excellency Tariq Ibrahim, Minister of Climate Change, Environment and Energy, on behalf of His Excellency Mohamed Muizzu, President of the Republic of the Maldives, co-chair of the Interactive Dialogue 1, to present a summary of the discussions.
Mr. President, Prime Minister, Mr. Gaston Brown, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude the 4th International Conference on SIDS, let me extend our deepest gratitude to the government and the wonderful people of Antigua and Barbuda, the United Nations Secretariat, and every single person who have contributed to this conference. On behalf of His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Muizzu, President of Republic of Maldives, it is my honor to deliver the summary of the Interactive Dialogue 1. The Interactive Dialogue 1 on revitalizing SIDS economies for accelerating the sustainable growth was held on May 2024, co-chaired by the President of Republic of Maldives, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Muizzu, and Minister of European Affairs and Ownership Steering, Republic of Finland, His Excellency Andreas Edlund-Royds. The dialogue featured a fireside chat between the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, His Excellency Gaston Brown, and the Secretary of the Interior of the United States, State Department of the Interior, Her Excellency Deborah Ann Harlan, which was moderated by Administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, Mr. Akim Steiner. This was followed by interventions from the Secretary General of the UN Trade and Development, Ms. Rebecca Greenspan, and the Director General of United Nations Industrial Development Organization, Mr. Gerard Muller. 21 participants made interventions during the interactive dialogue, including representatives from member states, intergovernmental organizations, UN system agencies, and other stakeholders. During the discussion, several participants reflected on the importance of building SIDS' productive capacity to enable them to better address the impacts of external shocks and stresses, and by extension, contribute to their resilience. In this regard, participants emphasized the importance of investing in human capital, inclusive education, and training as key to achieving resilience in SIDS. Some stressed the importance of using SIDS' natural resources to advance their economic transformation with particular reference to the ocean. The potential of blue economy in driving economic growth and sustainable development in SIDS should be harnessed, while at the same time preserving and regenerating marine ecosystems. Participants also called on a paradigm shift in development assistance, moving towards a more holistic approach that takes into consideration the vulnerabilities of SIDS. Participants also stressed the importance of ensuring profit generated from the tourism sector and retain and reinvest locally. The need to diversify local economies, including sustainable fisheries, agriculture and aquaculture, amongst others, was also highlighted. Several participants also noted the importance of investing in digitalization and digital infrastructure, as well as the need for further inclusion of SIDS in global value chains. The issue of finance for development was also discussed. Greater efforts are required to unlock additional financing for investments in SIDS, as well as to increase inflows for private capital. At the same time, special provisions on SIDS external debt must be taken into consideration through restructuring the debt of countries that have been hit by natural disasters and by compensating carbon sequestration through dedicated credit mechanisms. Participants also noted the urgent need to streamline the process to access specific project funds to climate financing, to increase SIDS' resilience against climate change, and to bolster development efforts. In conclusion, on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Moizu, President of the Republic of Maldives, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the participants of these valuable contributions as we now take forward the solutions as we implement the Antigua Barbuda agenda for SIDS. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of Climate Change, Environment and Energy, who spoke on behalf of the co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 1. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Cook Islands on behalf of His Excellency Mark Brown, Prime Minister of the Cook Islands, co-chair of the Interactive Dialogue 2, to present a summary of the discussions.
Kia ora and warm Pacific greetings. The Cook Islands is honored to be able to relay back the outcomes of Interactive Dialogue 2. The Interactive Dialogue 2 on enhancing critical forms of financing and aid effectiveness through collaborative partnerships, a conversation, was co-chaired by His Excellency Mr. Nuno Sampaio, Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Portugal, and the Honorable Mark Brown, Prime Minister of the Cook Islands. The dialogue featured a fireside chat between His Excellency, Mr. Orlando Habet, Minister of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management for Belize, and Ms. Maria del Pilar Garrido Gonzalo, Director for Development Cooperation Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, moderated by Ms. Dima Al-Khatib, Director of the United Nations for South-South Cooperation, followed by interventions from Mr. Jorge Moreira da Silva, Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of United Nations Office for Project Services, and Mr. Ambrose Fayole, Vice President of European Investment Bank. The fireside chat and subsequent contributions distilled 8 key messages. The first was the need for the international community to scale up additional finance to support climate adaptation and structural transformation in SIDS. Linked to this was the need for complementary reform of the international financial architecture to facilitate the repurposing of special drawing rights for development, making debt workouts easier and increasing the representation of SIDS in the reform and decision-making processes. The third message acknowledged the formidable risks posed by climate change for SIDS. The meeting called for the mainstreaming of adaptation and disaster risk mitigation initiatives across all sectors, in particular by ensuring the inclusion of disaster clauses in debt contracts to provide crucial moratoria on debt repayments and to enhance liquidity space for SIDS following a disaster. Increased technology transfer and capacity building is also needed to facilitate SIDS adaptation to climate change. The fourth message asserted that the time is ripe for the implementation of multidimensional vulnerability index, which would not only provide resources to SIDS based on their real and objective needs, but would also ensure that countries are no longer penalized for their hard-won efforts to achieve higher income status. The fifth message centered around the need for climate and other development finance to be made more accessible and channeled to projects that lead to meaningful development progress in SIDS. This would require capacity building to help resource-constrained SIDS pursue the technical and institutional strengthening needed to meet the conditions and requirements to access resources of the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation and Loss and Damage Funds, amongst others. Recognizing the critical role that the private sector should play in financing development, the sixth message called for robust engagement with private investors to encourage their greater investment in the sustainable development of SIDS. This would require a larger pool of bankable projects that can generate profits and remain viable over the long term. Governments can help to de-risk investments for private investors through blended finance arrangements and well-designed public-private partnerships. The seventh message highlighted the need to increase investments in social welfare, infrastructure, improving access to health and human services, addressing chronic undernourishment amongst marginalized groups, and the epidemic of non-communicable diseases present in many SIDS. Finally, the dialogue challenged SIDS to upgrade and modernize their data systems to better track and monitor finance allocations to ensure its optimal use. There was also a call for more robust and structured global partnerships led by SIDS and supported by strong monitoring and evaluation systems to ensure high development impact. We thank all the distinguished participants and the audience who contributed to making this interactive dialogue a success. Meta Kimata.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Cook Islands who spoke on behalf of the co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 2. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Germany. On behalf of Her Excellency Jennifer Morgan, State Secretary and Special Envoy for International Climate Action at the Federal Foreign Office in Germany, co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 3, to present a summary of the discussions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. May I avail myself of this opportunity to thank Antigua and Barbuda and you personally for your hospitality and to congratulate you for this extremely successful conference. Mr. President, Interactive Dialogue 3 on making climate finance work for SIDS, building on the outcomes of UNFCCC COP28, was co-chaired by His Excellency Mr. Suranjel Whips Jr., President of Republic of Palau, and Her Excellency Ms. Jennifer Morgan, State Secretary and Special Envoy for International Climate Action at the Federal Foreign Office, Federal Republic of Germany. The dialogue featured a fireside chat between His Excellency Mr. Thomas Anker Christensen, State Secretary and Special Envoy for Climate, Denmark, and His Excellency Mr. Nadir Nigel Hamid Hassan, Minister for Finance, Economic Planning and Trade of Seychelles, moderated by Dr. Simona Marinescu, Senior Advisor, Small Island Developing States, UNOPS. The fireside chat was followed by interventions from Ms. Mafalda Duarte, Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund, and Mr. Simon Steele, Executive Secretary, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. The fireside chat and subsequent discussions distilled a number of key messages. Across the floor, parties stressed the substantial level of finance and assistance needed to accomplish a climate-resilient 1.5 degrees Celsius aligned future for SIDS. Top on the agenda of many parties were the crucial importance of operationalizing by COP29 in Baku the fund for responding to loss and damage in a way that is fit for purpose. Parties were unanimous about the urgent need to improve access to finance for SIDS as being among the most vulnerable nations worldwide. In this context, the need to move faster on implementing the Multi-Vulnerability Index, MVI, and more generally, the challenges faced by middle-income SIDS to access concessional finance were emphasized. Some speakers noted the similar needs of overseas territories. Responding to questions about access to the GCF, the executive director described how access for SIDS has improved already, but acknowledged the need to go further and suggested the establishment of a task force on simplified procedures. There was broad consensus about the importance to agree on an ambitious new collective quantified goal, NCQG, at COP29. Several speakers pointed out that scaling up climate finance from all sources, including private, multilateral, and bilateral, is essential, as is further work to effectively mobilize resources across a broad range of contexts, including innovative sources and private sector mobilization. Several speakers highlighted the recent report by OECD that developed countries surpassed for the first time their USD 100 billion climate finance commitment. The importance of also reaching the goal to at least double adaptation finance by 2025 was stressed, as well as the need for to further improve transparency to climate finance. Many speakers stressed the urgent need for further reforms to the international financial system and ensure that it is fit for purpose. The importance of linking this work to the climate finance debate inside UNFCCC was highlighted to transform the billions into the trillions that will be needed for the implementation of the next round of NDCs that are in line with a 1.5-degree goal in a whole of economy approach. And this concludes, Mr. President, the report of the interactive dialogue. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Germany, who spoke on behalf of the co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 3. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Penelope Beckles-Robinson, Minister of Planning and Development for Trinidad and Tobago, co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 4, to present a summary of the discussions.
Mr. President, Assistant Secretary General, Excellencies, as we bring this conference to a close, let me again thank you, the government and the people of Antigua and Barbuda, for the warm hospitality extended to all participants during this conference, and also to congratulate you on your vision and leadership for what has been a very successful and productive conference. Excellencies, Interactive Dialogue 4 on leveraging data and digital technologies and building effective institutions for a resilient future in SIDS was co-chaired by Her Excellency Ms. Darsa Melbard, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Latvia, and myself, Penelope Beckles, the Minister of Planning and Development of Trinidad and Tobago. The fireside chat was moderated by Pamela Cook Hamilton, Executive Director of International Trade Center. The panelists in this dialogue were Her Excellency Dr. Carla Nathalie Barnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community CARICOM, and Mr. Vidar Helsen, Executive Secretary of Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and Assistant Director General of UNESCO. The fireside chat participants were Her Excellency Mina Lina Lind, Vice Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, and His Excellency Mr. Carlos James, Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development, Culture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. 20 participants made interventions during the interactive dialogue. The co-chairs highlighted the transformative power of digital technologies and data to improve public services. They emphasized the need for coherent national development plans for leveraging technologies to leapfrog development stages. During the fireside chat, Estonia described their post-independence leap to a digital society, supported by a legal framework, government commitment, cybersecurity, digital literacy, and public-private partnerships. St. Vincent and the Grenadines highlighted the need for policy-level collaboration and identifying data gaps. CARICOM emphasized the challenge of modernizing and developing greater bandwidth to enhance production, trade, and economic opportunities, while UNESCO highlighted the critical role of policy and data in ocean management, stressing the importance of technology, skills, partnership, and ocean observation. Delegates emphasized the importance of effective governance and strong institutions for better policies and public services, particularly for marginalized groups, and that SIDS can leverage digital technologies to create new economic opportunities and enhance governance. They stressed the need for adequate policies and legal frameworks to harness digital technologies and promote digital government, including in support of one-stop shops for service delivery. Whole-of-government approaches were deemed essential for sound policy making and digital transformation. High internet costs undermine competitiveness in e-commerce and trade in SIDS. Investments in digital infrastructure, public goods, and skills are crucial for making digital services accessible, affordable, safe, and secure, and for enabling social empowerment as well as economic diversification. Delegates also emphasized the importance of data and information for evidence-based policy making and government services, especially in healthcare, agriculture, disaster risk reduction, and digital transformation. However, Antigua and Barbuda for SIDS was recognized as a strong framework for future action. Speakers highlighted the critical importance of digital skills and education for long-term sustainability. There were calls for mechanisms to facilitate knowledge transfer and ensure data protection and security. The SIDS Center for Excellence and Global Data Hub were noted as crucial for managing data challenges, supporting capacity building, and fostering partnerships among academia, citizens, government, and the private sector. Strengthening data collection mechanisms was deemed essential for economies of scale and sharing data as a public good. Regional integration and international cooperation were highlighted as essential themes. Public-private partnerships, resource pooling, and leveraging existing international cooperation were hailed as key to sustainable development, enabling progress towards the SDGs without the need for new mechanisms. I thank you.
I thank the co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 4. I now give the floor to His Excellency Pedro Lopez, Deputy Minister for Digital Economy, on behalf of His Excellency José Luis Correa Silva, Prime Minister of the Republic of Cabo Verde, co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 5, to present a summary of the discussions.
Good afternoon. Interactive Dialogue 5 on investing in human capital, addressing health crises in small island developing states, and building the potential of youth in small island developing states was held on 30 of May 2024. The dialogue was co-chaired by His Excellency Mr. José Ulisses de Pina Correia Silva, Prime Minister of Cabo Verde, and His Excellency Mr. Patrice Gomes, Minister of Plenipotentiary of St. Martin, Kingdom of the Netherlands. The fireside chat was moderated by Ms. Cindy H. McCann, Executive Director of the World Food Programme, and attended by Mr. Vikram Bharat, Minister of Natural Resources of Guyana, and Ms. Amida Salsiai Al-Sinjabana, Executive Secretary of United Nations, ESCAP. The panelists in the dialogue were Baroness Patricia Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and Ms. Karuna Rana, Youth Advocate, co-founder, IES SIDS Youth Group. Participants highlighted their deep concern regarding the confluence of crises and exogenous shocks affecting SIDS, the fragility of health and social protection systems, and rapidly aging populations, which all restrict economic growth and the potential of younger generations. They also pointed to the increased threats of climate change and environmental degradation on the lives of the youth and their lack of educational and employment opportunities. The speakers called for multifaceted and holistic approaches to greater investments in strengthening human capital and put forward tangible solutions across health, education, and employment. On health, participants called for the strengthening of health systems, moving towards universal health coverage and addressing burning issues, including the high burden of non-communicable diseases and mental health conditions, including key risk factors, improving maternal health, nutrition, and food security, addressing climate-sensitive diseases, improving the climate resilience on the health infrastructure, and strengthening health worker training, social protection, and leadership. Other participants highlighted the need for greater investments in sexual and reproductive health services and prevention of gender-based violence. On education, many participants referred to the importance of ensuring quality education at levels across all seats, harnessing the demographic dividends, including vocational and technical training programs, digital education, teacher training, adult education, and lifelong learnings, which will enable a reduction in the number of unemployed and strengthen economic resilience across SIDS. On employment, investments are needed to create enriching employment opportunities, establishing competitive industries, and leverage the natural resources of SIDS, including their ocean-based economies. Participants also called for dedicated efforts to prevent the migration of skilled workers and to minimize the brain drain by developing countries. The meaningful engagement of the youth was noted by many as a key lever to enable them to become agents of change. Participants also shared experiences about regional and national experiences to strengthen the human capital, including about national youth policies and empowerment initiatives and programs to strengthen gender equality. Many offered to share best practices and technologies through South-South and triangular cooperation, while some called for the pooling of resources in SIDS regions to leverage local knowledge. Many participants underscore the need for increased international financial support for strengthening human capital development in SIDS, including investments in innovative technologies and programs. Examples of innovative tools, including e-health programs, telemedicine, digital learning programs, and the use of nuclear technology to improve diagnosis of diseases. The need for great investments in the generation and collection of quality, disaggregated data across all areas of human capital was also cited as an urgent priority. It's my great honor, on behalf of His Excellency, Mr. Ulisses Correia e Silva, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Cabo Verde, to announce that our country, Cabo Verde, is offering to host SIDS4 in 2035. Thank you very much.
I thank the Deputy Minister for Digital Economy, who spoke on behalf of the co-chair of Interactive Dialogue 5. The conference has thus concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 9. Before proceeding to the next item on our program of work, I'd like to propose that the conference hear from Mr. Tomasi Blair, Deputy Permanent Representative Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations in New York, on an exceptional basis. Key messages from the high-level meeting to discuss the mobilization of resources for small island developing states, convened by the Secretary General of the United Nations on May 28, 2024, pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/245. May I take it that the conference wishes to proceed in the manner I have just outlined? I hear no objection. The conference shall proceed accordingly. I give the floor to Mr. Tomasi Blair, Deputy Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations in New York.
Good afternoon. I begin by stating that I am extremely pleased to be delivering the summary of the resource mobilization for SIDS meeting. This meeting was extremely important to us. My ambassador and I consulted extensively with the Secretary General and his team to ensure that this meeting was not only attended at the highest level, but also produced a tangible outcome. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the high-level meeting on resource mobilization for small island developing states, convened by the Secretary General on the sidelines of the conference on Tuesday, May 28th, left no doubt that much more must be done to ensure the global financial system delivers for SIDS. The outcome of the high-level meeting, the call to action on mobilizing resources for SIDS, jointly issued by the UN Secretary General and Prime Minister Brown of Antigua and Barbuda, underscores that concerted and urgent action is needed to enable SIDS to finance the implementation of the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS. The concrete, ambitious points in the call to action were echoed at the highest political level throughout the high-level meeting. Many participants underscored the urgent need for reform of the international financial architecture to better serve the unique challenges faced by SIDS. First, on debt, participants highlighted the severe over-indebtedness of SIDS, with approximately half of SIDS facing unsustainable debt burdens. Strong calls were made to strengthen debt relief mechanisms to include all SIDS and reduced the burden of debt accumulated due to recurrent external shocks. The contribution of technical assistance and experts to support the establishment and implementation of the Debt Sustainability Support Service Initiative for SIDS will be a critical mechanism to help enable SIDS to manage their debt effectively. The need for tailored solutions to enable SIDS to meet their obligations while pursuing climate action and sustainable development is also essential. A number of debt for climate and debt for nature swap initiatives have already been completed and are underway in SIDS, creating much needed physical space. Several MDBs and bilateral lenders have already incorporated climate resilient debt clauses into loan contracts to provide relief for SIDS when they are hit by shocks. Second, despite their significant vulnerabilities, many SIDS do not have access to concessional finance. High-level meeting participants highlighted that the multidimensional vulnerability index offers great promise to change this by integrating vulnerability into eligibility criteria. The Intergovernmental Task Force and subsequent adoption of the MBI by the UN General Assembly, leading to its eventual use by international financial institutions and MDBs, are key next steps to realize this goal. Third, many participants emphasized the pressing need for SIDS to have greater representation in the governance of the international financial architecture, including through dedicated seats on their boards. I am pleased to report that a number of development partners, MDBs, and international organizations presented both existing and new actions they are undertaking to support resource mobilization and safeguard debt sustainability in SIDS. Nonetheless, there remains substantial concern over the unmet commitments of developed countries on climate finance and official development assistance, and the urgency of honoring these commitments was stressed by many. Excellencies, the international community can advance this agenda at key upcoming moments. In this regard, I reiterate the call by the Secretary General and Prime Minister Brown for world leaders, and I quote, to seize the opportunity of the upcoming Summit of the Future and next year's 4th International Conference on Financing for Development to advance the critical reforms of the global financial architecture so that it better serves the needs of SIDS. I thank you.
I thank the Deputy Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations in New York. The conference will now consider sub-item B of Agenda Item 7, entitled Report of the Credentials Committee. The conference has before it the report of the Credentials Committee issued as document A/CONF.223/2024/5 concerning the credentials of the representatives to the conference. I now give the floor to the Chair of the Credentials Committee, Her Excellency Jane Magafalu Kabui Watara of Solomon Islands, to introduce the report of the committee.
Mr. President, Ministers, Excellencies, all protocols observed. On behalf of the Credentials Committee, I have the honor to introduce the report of the committee concerning the credentials of the representatives to the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States, contained in document A/CONF.223/2024/5. Having considered the credentials of the representatives at its meeting on 29 May 2024, the Credentials Committee adopted, without a vote, a resolution accepting the credentials. The committee also recommended to the conference the adoption of a draft resolution concerning credentials of representatives to the conference contained in paragraph 14 of the report of the committee. Mr. President, I would like to note that after the meeting of the Credentials Committee, formal credentials were received by the Secretary General from Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Cabo Verde, Kiribati, Norway, and Palau, and information concerning their representatives have been received from Niue. The conference may wish to accept the additional credentials submitted after the meeting of the Credentials Committee. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to the members of the committee and to the Secretariat for facilitating our work. I thank you.
I thank the Chair of the Credentials Committee. May I take it that the conference wishes to adopt the draft resolution entitled Credentials of Representatives to the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States, recommended by the committee in its report, and accepted the additional credentials which the conference was just informed of? I hear no objection. It is so decided. The conference has thus concluded its consideration of sub-item B of Agenda 7 and of Agenda Item 7 as a whole. The conference will now consider Agenda Item 10, entitled Outcome of the Conference. In connection with this item, the conference has before it a draft resolution issued as document A:223-2024/L.1, in which the conference would inter alia adopt as the outcome document of the conference the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for Small Island Developing States, a renewed declaration for resilient prosperity contained in document A:223-2024/FLOR, as approved by the preparatory committee and recommended for adoption by the conference. Before we proceed to adoption, I would like to thank all delegations for their constructive participation in the negotiation of the draft outcome document, and especially the co-chairs of the preparatory committee, His Excellency Ali Nazir Mohammed, Permanent Representative of the Maldives to the United Nations in New York, and Her Excellency Caroline Shewalger, Permanent Representative of New Zealand to the United Nations in New York, for leading the negotiations. The conference will now take a decision on draft resolution A/conf.223/2024/L.1, entitled The Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for Small Island Developing States, a renewed declaration for resilient prosperity. May I take it that the conference wishes to adopt draft resolution A/conf.223/2024/L.1? I hear no objection. It is so decided. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 3 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of New Zealand, also on behalf of Maldives.
Testing one.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister, Deputy Secretary General, Excellencies, friends. I have the honour to deliver this statement on behalf of the Maldives and New Zealand, co-chairs of the SIDS4 Preparatory Committee. The adoption of the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS represents an important milestone for SIDS' journey towards resilient prosperity. Agreed by consensus, the Abbas is a demonstration of the international community's commitment to SIDS. More importantly, it is a manifestation of SIDS' leadership and their aspirations for their people and their homes. Abbas is not perfect. Many hoped for stronger commitments and higher ambition. However, in many ways, the true test of the Abbas is still to come. That test being whether the international community genuinely rallies around the Abbas to ensure its effective implementation. Whether the Abbas stands the test of time will also depend on whether SIDS themselves draw on the actions and commitments enshrined in the document to guide their sustainable development over the coming decade. Implementation of the Abbas must begin immediately. The UN system has an important role to play. This includes ensuring the completion of the Abbas monitoring and evaluation framework. After all, what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. The UN system must also reduce fragmentation in how it delivers to SIDS. Development partners must evolve. We must be more dynamic in providing harmonised, SIDS-led development support. Partners must deliver on the commitments made in the Abbas to provide technical and financial support. Partners must be more flexible in adopting new tools and approaches which respond to the special circumstances of SIDS. The international community must also recognise that the unique nature of SIDS is not a fragility, but rather a source of strength for our planet and people. Partnering with SIDS has been a core foreign policy priority for New Zealand for decades. Our identity and our destiny is intimately intertwined with our Pacific family. Maldives and New Zealand consider it a great privilege to have served as co-chairs of the PrepCom. Zuri, Azan, Rachel, Greta, Rika, thank you. Ambassador Ali and I cannot understate the importance of your commitment and creativity throughout the preparatory process. Thank you too to all the member states. Your hard work and political will allowed us to navigate difficult issues and ultimately achieve a consensus outcome. The robust but always respectful leadership of the Chair of AOSIS, Samoa, deserves special recognition. Ambassador Luteru and team, whawhai lava. And to our host country, Antigua and Barbuda, respect. Ambassador Webson, we are happy. Ambassador Webson, we were happy to rise to your challenge of not bringing the Abbas negotiations to your wonderful island. As a result, we have been able to focus this week on how we will navigate the future together, including with a wide range of stakeholders who have shaped our thinking on the Abbas over the last year. Thank you to our Bureau, Barbados, Cape Verde, Dominican Republic, Fiji, Italy, Latvia, Romania, and Seychelles. Your collegiality was a crucial ingredient. Maldives and New Zealand also recognise St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Seychelles, Tonga, and Cape Verde for making available your beautiful countries for the preparatory meetings. And finally, to Undersecretary General Lee and your team from DESA, High Representative Fatima and the OHR LLS team, and of course the team from DGACM. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Our deepest gratitude for your dedication in the preparations for and the delivery of the conference. Maldives and New Zealand hope that the spirit of solidarity that underpinned the creation of the ABAS continues as we move into implementation. Nau te roro, naku te roro, ka ora ai te iwi. By working together, we all flourish. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
I thank the distinguished representative of New Zealand. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Maldives.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me congratulate Your Excellency, the people and the government of Antigua and Barbuda for successfully hosting the 4th International Conference on Small Island Development States. From ministers to senior officials, from civil servants to the many volunteers, all of you have done an excellent job. Let me offer our gratitude to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, UN Undersecretary General Lee Jinhua, Undersecretary General Rabab Fatima, and the UN team for the smooth and effective functioning of the conference. The Maldives was privileged to have co-chaired the SIDS4 Preparatory Committee with New Zealand. The permanent representative of New Zealand, Caroline Schwalga, and the permanent representative of Maldives, Dr. Ali Nasir Mohammed, effectively led negotiations for the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS. Navigating through complex challenges, ensuring that important areas are reflected, the outcome document presents an ambitious, action-oriented, and forward-looking blueprint for sustainable development of SIDS. I would also like to convey a special thank you to the people of Antigua and Barbuda. We have been touched by your warm welcome. From the moment our delegation landed in St. John's, we felt very much at home. Thank you for your hospitality. We will leave your beautiful island nation with fond memories of its stunning beauty. The beauty of our islands reminds us of the urgency to act, to protect its natural resources, to ensure our people continue to live a life of prosperity. President Dr. Muhammad Muiz had one clear message: SIDS must be the architects of our own destiny. We must lead. We must step up. Our smallness will not hold us back, not anymore. We ask our partners to support us as we implement the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS. By boosting our state and productive capacities, by facilitating greater access to finance, and by helping us forge genuine partnerships with the private sector, with civil society, and other stakeholders. Mr. President, the Maldives is committed to working with all stakeholders to fully implement the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS. Let us work together in charting a course towards resilient and inclusive prosperity. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Maldives. We have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote after the vote. The conference is thus concluded its consideration of agenda item 10. The conference will now consider agenda item 11, entitled Adoption of the Report of the Conference. In connection with this item, I invite the conference to first turn to a draft resolution entitled Expression of Thanks to the government and people of Antigua and Barbuda, contained in document ACONF.223/2024/L.2. I now give the floor to His Excellency Orlando Habet, Minister of Sustainable Development and Climate Change of Belize, on behalf of the Group of 77 and China, to introduce the draft resolution.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished participants, at the request of the Chair of the Group of 77 and China, I have the honor to introduce on behalf of the group the draft resolution entitled Expression of Thanks to the People and Government of Antigua and Barbuda, as contained in document A/conf223/2024/L2. The G77 and China extends its deep appreciation to the government of Antigua and Barbuda for hosting this 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. We also commend the co-chairs and bureau members of the Conference Preparatory Committee for their valuable contributions in preparing for the conference. Furthermore, we extend our gratitude to the delegation of Samoa for negotiating the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, ABAS, just adopted on behalf of G77 and China. The draft resolution is based on the precedent of the 3rd International Conference on Small Island Developing States, held in 2014 in Samoa. It expresses deep appreciation to His Excellency Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, for his outstanding contribution as President of the 4th International Conference on SIDS. It also conveys to the people of Antigua and Barbuda the gratitude of the conference for the hospitality and the warm welcome extended to all participants. Finally, the group looks forward to the consensual adoption of this important draft resolution, expressing our gratitude to the government and people of Antigua and Barbuda for the excellent hosting of the conference. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of Sustainable Development and Climate Change of Belize. May I take it that the conference wishes to adopt draft resolution A/conf.223/2024/L.2? I hear no objection. It is so decided. I now give the floor to His Excellency Walton Alfonso Webson, Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations in New York.
Mr. President, distinguished Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, Excellencies, colleagues, I take the floor to express on behalf of my government our deep appreciation to the many partners who joined us in making this conference the success that it is. Mr. President, we express our thanks to our colleagues and partners from New Zealand and Maldives who shepherded the outcome document, the ABAS, to now having the resolution passed here so that we can now proudly say we can march forward for the next 10 years with this document, ABAS, as our guide. I express our appreciation to the many partners in New York who came to the fore when we asked for their support in helping us, the smallest nation ever to put on this conference, to join us to make this conference a true island conference, a conference by one of the smallest members of the United Nations family. But I could not, Mr. President, go forward without expressing my appreciation to the government and people of my own country, to you, Honorable Prime Minister, and your cabinet for supporting what was then a bold initiative, some may even say a precocious initiative, when Antigua offered, and I ask your permission for us to offer to host this conference. My staff thank you and your cabinet for working with us and believing in us. I thank your ministries for the support of the people they provided to support the conference, and the many national volunteers, hundreds of them, who rose to our call as a nation to show that in nationhood we can support an international effort. I would like, Mr. President, to express on behalf of our government the support of Undersecretary Lee and his team at DESA, and the support of Robert Fatima, my good friend, and her team at OHR-LLS for their support in taking us through this journey. We have had many other partners, Mr. President, and I would only mention a few just in case. Of course, there's always the danger of missing out. The members of the American University of Antigua and Barbuda, who readily, quickly supported us when we said we were going to host this conference, and are fully responsible for working with our government to make this facility available to us, but more so to show that the United Nations conference is the very first event to be held in this new brand conference center. I also offer our great and deep appreciation to the Public Foundation, who readily joined us to help to make this the success that it is today. Finally, Mr. President, Antigua and Barbuda continue to pledge its continued support to make sure that the Abbas is a reality, and the many dreams and aspirations in this document becomes a reality in the lives of the people, the citizens of the small island developing states, and that Abbas will be one of the tools that will help to guide us in meeting the challenges that we know we will face, but that's why we declared ourselves a moment for resilient prosperity. I thank you.
I thank the permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations in New York. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Barbados.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. If I were to put it in one word, I would say simply congratulations. That really does cover it all. I'm sure you will appreciate that Barbados, as the birthplace of the SIDS agenda, took a particular interest in watching how the godparent Antigua was shepherding our child along. We are extremely honored and pleased with the work done by your government, sir. I should like in particular to recognize my brother, Ambassador Webson, his team at New York, Tumasi Blair and Claxton Dewsbury and others, for what I know is the tremendous amount of work that they would have had to have done to pull this together in the time frame, and for all of the people of Antigua and Barbuda, because it was clearly, as we went around, an event in which they took tremendous pride and was a national effort. It was pulled off flawlessly, and that could not have happened without tremendous national spirit. I think that it speaks well and speaks loudly to the resilience and capacity of people from small island developing states. May I also recognize the work done by those in the United Nations system, particularly DASA and OHRLLS, who I know from having been there and worked with them would have had to have been seeing about it at the technical level within the UN system and trying to coordinate everything. I wish, as always, to thank AOSIS for its unswerving efforts on behalf of SIDS. If I may observe, this is the feel-good moment. This is when we say, we've worked hard, we've done it, we have come to agreement, and consensus always feels good. But the real challenge lies ahead of us. We have been discussing the prosperity, the development, the sustainability within the context of SIDS now for several years. How do we move from conversation to implementation? Where do we find the capital and the new capital that is necessary? How do we build the partnerships? How do we build the policy and programmatic frameworks that will deliver to the people on the ground? Prime Minister, I know as a politician, you understand that the people outside the door have expectations coming out of this, so that beyond the feel-good moment, all of us in Antigua, and I say all of us because it's all of us in the region, it's all of us in SIDS countries across the world who want to see a difference and be able to have our citizens live with a sense of dignity and to move beyond promises to delivery. So I very much hope that we are going to be able to put in place the partnerships, the implementation, the frameworks, mobilize the capital that is necessary to get it done, so that when we move to the next SIDS conference, SIDS4, we will be able to look back with a tremendous sense of accomplishment. In that regard, Prime Minister, you will forgive me, I hope, if I reiterate the Prime Minister's call for a biennial meeting of SIDS heads, because the world is now changing so rapidly, and there are so many dynamics for which we have to have regard, that it would be useful for SIDS heads to get together in between the 5 and 10-year gaps in order to take stock of the changes that have occurred and see what needs to be done to tweak any programs or policies in order to be more effective and in order to be responsive to changing conditions across the world that affect us as takers of shocks and takers of prices and takers of many global circumstances. Prime Minister, I have noted that Antigua's motto, your national motto, is each endeavoring, all achieving. Prime Minister, I think that that is the note on which I should end. You endeavored to pull this off, and all of you, all Antiguans achieved, and you have done the region tremendously proud. I end as I began. Congratulations.
I thank the distinguished representative of Barbados. I now invite the conference to turn to document aconf.223/2024/L.3, containing the draft report of the conference. In this connection, I give the floor to the Rapporteur General of the conference, Her Excellency Sanita Pavluta Deslandes, Permanent Representative of Latvia to the United Nations in New York, to introduce the draft report of the conference.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to introduce the draft report of the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States, as contained in document A/Conf 223/2024/L3. Chapter 1 of the draft report will be finalized to reflect the adoption of draft resolutions A/Conf 223/2024/L1, entitled The Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for Small Island Developing States, a renewed declaration for resilient prosperity, and A/Conf 223/2024/L2, entitled Expression of Thanks to the People of Government of Antigua and Barbuda. Chapter 2 contains information on the organization of work and other organizational matters, including information on date and venue of the conference, attendance, opening of the conference, the election of the president and other officers, the adoption of the rules of procedure and the agenda, credentials of representatives to the conference, and documentation. Chapter 3 will be finalized to list all representatives who spoke during the general debate at each plenary meeting. Chapter 4 will also be finalized to reflect information on the 5 interactive dialogues. Chapter 5 will be finalized to reflect information on the consideration of the report of the Credentials Committee. Chapter 6 will be finalized to reflect information on the draft outcome of the conference as contained in document A/conf 223/2024/4. Chapters 7 and 8 will be finalized to reflect the proceedings of this meeting, including in relation to the adoption of the report of the conference and the closure of the conference. A list of documents before the conference will be referenced in the final report. Mr. President, that concludes my introduction of the draft report, and I have the honor to submit to the conference the draft report for its adoption and seek the authorization of the conference to finalize the report after its closure with the support of the Secretariat. And I also wish to thank the government and the people of Antigua and Barbuda for hosting this conference and for your incredible hospitality. I thank you.
I thank the Rapporteur General of the conference. May I take it that the conference wishes to adopt the draft report and authorize the Rapporteur General to finalize the report in conformity with the practice of the United Nations? I hear no objection. It is so decided. The conference has thus concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 11. Madam Deputy Secretary General, distinguished heads of state and government, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the last item on our agenda, Item 12, entitled Closure of the Conference, under which we will hear concluding statements. In accordance with Rule 16 of the Rules of Procedure, I now give the floor to Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, to deliver closing remarks on behalf of the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, President of the Conference, our Conference Secretary General, Mr. Li Junhua, my sister, Ms. Rabab Fatima, the High Representative of OHL, RLLS, you will never get this right, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and many friends that I see in the audience today. I truly am delighted to be here for the closing session of the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. It is at the beginning of a 10-year sprint, and I hope that there'll be no brakes that will be put on the SIDS. Allow me to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to the government and the people of Antigua and Barbuda for their warm and generous hospitality to the Secretary General, myself, and the teams. I would also like to add my appreciation and commend the leadership and the vision of Prime Minister Gaston Brown in delivering a very successful conference and setting a new bar for the Caribbean, that one you can be proud of, and I'd like for you to join me in applauding that. I would also like to thank member states, the United Nations system, international financial institutions, the private sector, and most especially civil society, students, and young people who have united as a team in St. John's behind a shared ambition to get the development journeys of SIDS back on track and to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Over the past few days, we have heard that we are at a critical juncture for SIDS, and that SIDS are on the front line of the climate crises. Sea level rise and more frequent extreme weather events continue to threaten SIDS, its people, its ecosystems, its economies, despite their insignificant contribution to carbon emissions. Record temperatures have demonstrated that we're not on track to meet the 1.5 target that SIDS depend on. This is a global injustice, as you heard the Secretary General say, and the onus is really on the top 20 emitters to keep the promise of the Paris Agreement. Evidence over the last 4 years show that sustainable development prospects for SIDS have worsened as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, conflicts, and continued economic turmoil, already adding to the challenging landscape because of the unique vulnerabilities. Yet, we do have reasons of hope and optimism. The Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS provides concrete guidance to our collective efforts to support SIDS achieve resilient prosperity. The Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS presents a vision for the future that SIDS want and need, where SIDS economies develop the resilience that will allow them to withstand shocks, where their populations continue to enjoy the uniqueness of island life and are safe, healthy, productive, and prosperous, but also where access to food, energy, and water is guaranteed, where biodiversity is protected, the ocean as resources are conserved, and action on climate change meets the urgency of the moment. The Center of Excellence with its data hub and the debt sustainability support services for SIDS will foster SIDS-led solutions and will serve as a platform for more private sector engagement with the SIDS. To achieve the ambitions, the Abbas calls for the recognition and measurement of vulnerabilities and for significant new financing at scale and directed to where it matters most with a sense of urgency. Upon the request of Member States, the Secretary General had convened a high-level meeting on mobilization of resources, resulting in a call to action that sets out transformative priority areas, from reforms on the international financial architecture to give SIDS a seat at the inclusion of vulnerability criteria for the allocation of concessional long-term finance. The path has been set, yet success is not guaranteed, as we heard earlier. Excellencies, distinguished guests, success relies on each and every one of us stepping up in genuine partnerships that are timely, that are robust, and effective. Over the course of the last 4 days, many of you have made commitments to make the Abbas a reality. We've heard announcements about the ratification of the BBNJ, about knowledge hubs, facilities and mechanisms to support efforts for the stewardship of the oceans, fisheries, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, about South-South cooperation around green and blue bonds, and pledges for rechanneling of special drawing rights to provide additional financing for SIDS and to mobilize public and private investment towards SIDS initiatives. Early warning and anticipatory responses to safeguard food security have been highlighted by your discussions, in particular in light of worrying forecasts of what to expect in the context of the El Niño and in the future. Your robust discussions have also drawn attention to the aspiration of SIDS for inclusive and shared prosperity, with commitments towards increased social protection and availability of insurance schemes, support for children as they bear the burdens of SIDS systemic vulnerabilities, nature-based livelihood models, and harnessing of digital tools, science, innovation, and to create opportunities for everyone, everywhere, as a means to overcome the remoteness and limited capacities. Allow me to join many of you in insisting about the need for inclusive and meaningful engagement with civil society, including women's organizations, leadership, and in particular youth. All of this in the implementation of Abbas. No effort should be spared to ensure that the voices of those that are vulnerable and marginalized are heard, including those persons with disabilities, older persons, and indigenous peoples. We recognize the commitments that have been brought to the table, the European Union, the Netherlands, Germany, the United States, and we hope others will also step up to the scale, to the urgency that we require now. This is not about more projects. It is about inclusive growth that delivers that what is good for the goose is good for the gander. We have to have a more equal society in our world today, one that we aspire to in the 2030 agenda. We have heard what is not done, what is not measured is not done. But I think we need to take a reality check here. Yes, we want monitoring and evaluation, but let me say that halfway through the SDGs, what we did measure has not been done. And that's a wake-up call for us to, all seriousness, not to lose the credibility of the multilateral system when we set in places more frameworks, more monitoring and evaluation. The real work has to be done in bringing the means of implementation to the many plans, many frameworks, many conversations that we have, and make that a reality in the lives of everyone. We have to dig deeper to make sure that this is done. From the UN family, we commit to joining your efforts at all levels globally, to work with you to meet the 1.5 target towards increased finance and simplified processes at the regional level, connecting our multi-country offices with your teams and the expertise and skills that are needed. On the ground, our resident coordinators and our UN country teams will work hand in hand with all partners to support SIDS in their transitions to digital, green, blue, I hear even turquoise, that deliver resilient prosperity and sustainable development for populations of SIDS. Looking ahead, the Summit of the Future in September will be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to revitalize multilateralism. That's our international cooperation. That's about us in the global town hall of the United Nations, speaking to the village, our wealth, our humanity, our planet. And hopefully here, we can achieve a more fair and effective outcome, delivering on the promise that leaves no country and no one behind. I call on all of you to channel your contributions, your innovations, your ingenuity, as demonstrated over the course of the last 4 days to this convening. We must aim towards a strong and an ambitious outcome that reflects the aspirations of SIDS, which are not different to our collective aspiration for a prosperous and sustainable future. In 2025, the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development will address critical financing issues, including those that have been spoken to and are in the Abbas today. They will support the reform of the international financial architecture, and we must work towards COP29 and 30 to ensure we get the renewed ambitions of the NDCs that we seek. SIDS have set out their vision, and these again will be opportunities to take the agenda forward. Excellencies, distinguished guests, as we prepare to leave Antigua, let us remember that this conference marks the beginning of a new journey. Our responsibilities don't stop here. The Abbas must guide our efforts towards 2030. When we meet in 10 years' time, or as Ambassador from Barbados has said, maybe in shorter time, I hope that we are speaking of how the work has begun here and has made the 2030 Agenda and Paris Agreement a reality in people's lives and in the islands, the Pacific to the Caribbean, the Atlantic, the Indian, and the South China Sea. We have now paved that path to resilient prosperity for future generations. Let's try to go forward with a new sense of hope, solidarity, and determination to commit to a decade of delivery in a world where it doesn't seem so real, but in which our experience in the last 4 days here have made that hope more hopeful. I thank you.
I thank the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Now, please allow me to deliver my closing remarks as President of the conference. Thank you. Deputy Secretary General, heads of states and governments, heads of UN organizations and other institutions, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the close of SIDS4, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to all participants. To Ambassador Webson and his team at the mission in New York, Samoa as chair of AOSIS, the UN system, and the Public Foundation. I say thank you. I would also like to commend all the local stakeholders, including the volunteers, law enforcement, transportation and logistics, and protocol staff for their unmatched hospitality ensuring the safety and comfort of over 5,000 delegates. Excellencies, over the past few days, we've witnessed incredible collaboration, cooperation, and shared innovative ideas as we forge new pathways to achieve sustainable development. Today, we are not just concluding a conference, we are celebrating a new beginning for a brighter future for SIDS. The energy and commitment over the last 4 days have been nothing short of inspiring. Your presence in Antigua and Barbuda at SIDS4, and in particular, your participation in the high-level dialogues demonstrated a collective commitment to the future advancement of SIDS. This is a testament to the power of global solidarity and shared purpose. This week, we've achieved milestones that will have lasting impacts. On Tuesday, we launched the SIDS Debt Sustainability Service Initiative, a critical step towards addressing the unsustainable debt burden that many of our small island nations face. And just today, we inaugurated the SIDS Center of Excellence. These achievements are more than just announcements. They are institutional mechanisms that will allow for the full implementation of the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, the ABAS. These mechanisms represent our collective efforts to create a resilient and prosperous future for SIDS. The SIDS Center of Excellence will be a cornerstone in implementing the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS. It will serve as a global hub for data, technological innovation and investment, driving sustainable development across our islands. The SIDS Global Data Hub will enable us to harness accurate and timely data from effective and strategic planning purposes, while the innovation and technology mechanisms will introduce groundbreaking solutions, such as the use of artificial intelligence and other ICTs. Imagine AI-driven projects that can predict climate patterns, optimize resource use, and improve disaster response with early warning systems. These advancements will empower SIDS communities, making them more resilient and self-sufficient. We intend to move swiftly with the operationalization of the SIDS Center of Excellence, and within the next 12 months, we will convene the first Island Investment Forum. This Island Investment Forum, which is designed to attract investments in cutting-edge technologies in SIDS, will be held biannually and rotated among member states. The SIDS Debt Sustainability Service Initiative is an institutionalized mechanism to address the issue of debt sustainability in a holistic and systematic way, to mobilize bespoke financing for development, utilizing innovative instruments and strategies, including debt for climate and SDG swaps, carbon credits, and debt relief strategies. The DSSI will be a game changer for our islands. By addressing the unsustainable debt that hinders our progress, we are creating a pathway to financial stability and sustainability. This initiative will provide the support and resources needed to manage and restructure debt by reducing interest rates, and certainly to extend maturity transformation. This will create fiscal space, allowing SIDS to increase investments in vital areas such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. It's about giving our islands the breathing space they need to grow and to become resilient and prosperous. This initiative is indicative of our unwavering commitment to ensuring that no island is left behind. While we have accomplished much, our journey is far from over. The real work has just begun. We must continue to build on these foundations, striving for even greater achievements. Our vision for the future includes expanding the reach and impact of SIDS Center of Excellence and ensuring that the Debt Sustainability Service Initiative delivers tangible benefits to all our islands. Let us stay committed to multi-stakeholder partnerships, innovation, collaboration, and inclusivity, working together to overcome our unique challenges. We have the roadmap and institutional arrangements in place. Let's seize the opportunities to mobilize resources for our development. Let us walk together, seizing the opportunities and promise in the Abbas to accelerate the attainment of resilient prosperity during the next decade for all SIDS. I thank you. Having delivered my statement, I now declare closed the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States.
The Secretariat, Excellencies, the Secretariat has a housekeeping announcement on behalf of the host country. There will be a reception hosted by Foreign Minister Green at the Interpretation Center at Dow's Hill. Transportation will be available at 5:30 p.m. outside Gate 5. 5:30 outside Gate 5. Transportation will also be available at the reception at your respective accommodation, both at Gate 5 at 5:30 as well as at your respective accommodations reception. This is for the reception hosted by Foreign Minister Green of the host country, to be held at the Interpretation Center at Dow's Hill. Thank you for your attention.